So what I wanted to do was to review with you all the report that I gave to the Board of Trustees this past fall. And this is a report that I guess my goals were to convey a sense of enthusiasm and opportunity and a little bit of comparing ourselves to where we are versus other people. But also, I've added to that just some information about what it means to your state's well-being from a fiscal standpoint every time you add a graduated, credentialed college alum to the workforce, and also some of the opportunities for us in the future. So this is kind of an amalgamation of stuff I just heard yesterday at SACS and things that that the trustees needed to see and hear, and then also part of a presentation that I have put forward for the new governor and for the legislature about higher education in the private communities in general. Is that my vet calling? Okay. Now, yours sounds different than mine. I've got specialized ringtones. The vet doesn't bark, but I do have some people who do. Okay, so it was indeed the reason I had that slide, so you know that this is indeed the presentation that I gave to the board back in October. I use this title for them because I try to bring back to focus for them that the world of higher education has always been mission-driven through lip service. We have always said, we have a mission and this is what we do. But I couldn't say, maybe you could, somewhere around 10 years ago, maybe 15, accrediting institutions and independent institutions that are accredited, i.e. the colleges and universities, decided that mission-driven really did mean something. Before that, we had a mission, and then we always justified what we did as to how it fit the mission. And I think the slight shift in application is that today, both for our own feeling of integrity as well as our need for accreditation, it's not justifying what we do to the mission. It is using the mission to orient our perspective and activities. We have actually begun to use the mission as a group of professionals in academia to guide the ship. And I think that's extremely important. But it's no longer rare to say we're a mission-driven institution. I remember going to administrative meetings when I was dean back at Millsaps, and dean would get up and say, hi, I'm from such and such a college, and we're a mission-driven institution. I think if you went to SACS today and you stood up and said, hi, I'm Ed Schrader from Brenau University, and we're not mission-driven, that wouldn't go over too well. But in those days, it didn't mean as much. But I think it does mean something today, and it does mean something that we've worked with mission to understand what we're about. I think it's hard to be the stereotypical college of the last 100 years going forward. I think it's hard to be the stereotypical technical school. I think it's hard to be the stereotypical liberal arts school. I think that the world is a world of hybrids now, and we are moving more and more toward hybrids. So the fact that we say we're liberal arts based and that we bleed liberal arts, and it's what we wish to be sure that all of our students carry with them, and yet we say we're trying to prepare them for careers to be professionally and personally fulfilled and able to contribute to society, are not incompatible at all. But from my roots, and probably from many of your roots, if you in the past had said, hey, we are a liberal arts school that teaches professional programs and graduates more professionally credentialed individuals than we do folks with degrees in the pure liberal arts, then a lot of people who are purely liberal arts would not accept that as a valid statement. And as I've said before to you all, I'm a double Phi Beta Kappa. Right? I was inducted in the Phi Beta Kappa at Duke, and I was one of the founding members of the Phi Beta Kappa chapter, the Alpha Phi Beta Kappa in Mississippi at Millsaps, where I was privileged to be a co-founder with Eudora Welty. And she was from Smith, her original Phi Beta Kappa. But Ms. Welty and I discussed the fact that as much as Phi Beta Kappa was an interesting thing to have on your resume, that we both thought it was an anachronism. That what Phi Beta Kappa recognized at its time of founding as the core liberal arts were indeed at that time the core pre-professional degrees. If you were going to be a physician, you majored in biology, and you probably never went to medical school. You sat as an apprentice. If you were going to be a lawyer, you majored in English or some other literarily focused liberal study, and you sat for the bar. So when Phi Beta Kappa was established and really founded, the liberal arts were professional degrees. And today, for Phi Beta Kappa to say that a performing institution that has excelled in graduating vocal performers, keyboard performers, stage performers, is not liberal in its arts because those are performers, because you've given them a degree in performance, is just a little crazy. So I think it's time for academe to think about what do the liberal arts mean in the application of our students' lives. And that really is a lot about what this mission statement says. That we're looking for opportunities to let our students live these extraordinary lives. And we're trying to equip them with both an appreciation for the breadth and depth of human knowledge, the experience, the panoply of history, and the credential and training to let them get a job and do something productive for themselves and for society. Those are not inconsistent. As a matter of fact, as you often say, I'd much rather have a nurse or an OT that has gone through Brenau's liberal core than someone who has gained the skills of fixing that joint, fixing that speech pattern, or giving me that shot, but has no interest in me as a human being. The blend of liberal and professional capabilities is much more important today than ever. And I think that our mission pushes us in that direction. Now, we developed a goal from that mission. You can't really, unless it's an extraordinary mission, use a mission as a strategic or tactical direction. It guides your thinking. You know, in the handbook and in the catalog now, I think. But anyway, we have 10 derivative sort of operational points of leadership, points of emphasis, things that are really interpretations of how do you put that mission statement into play. And the strategic plan is what guides us on a longer term basis. And I think this is a plan that I saw extremely well supported over Monday at Sachs by David Gergen and a couple of really fine speakers at the President's Day meetings. Now, they didn't say, well, Brenau University's got this great plan. What they said is all the elements that are in this plan. So that we'll be an internationally recognized leader, I think is just derivative of what we'll do in the plan after that. blending liberal arts and professional preparation is what I just talked about in way too much length. And that will result in accelerated degrees and advanced degrees. Now, putting that into practical language, it means we will allow the students who want to get through their educational experience at a more rapid pace the opportunity to do so. We're not going to turn a 4-year experience into a 3-year experience, but we're going to say that if you want to make it a 3-year experience and you are capable of absorbing and producing and developing the skills that you need in those 3 years, we're going to give you the path that will allow you to do so. So we're going to allow you to spend less calendar time in school so you can achieve your goals faster. And that we're going to offer you more opportunities for graduate and advanced study beyond that baccalaureate degree in graduate programs. So what that meant was, when we developed our strategic plan, is that we're going to look at programs that will allow students to come to college sooner in an early college type approach. We will allow students to finish their baccalaureate in a shorter amount of time, to move into graduate studies in an accelerated pattern. I think you look at interior design and occupational therapy, they're already pushing that 5-year undergraduate graduate combination of learning, and we'll find other ways to do that. Why do in 6 years what you can do in 5 if you can come out more qualified in 5? The word in here, innovative higher education, the words innovative higher education, I think when we put this strategic plan together and this goal together, we didn't realize how important they were. But over the last 12 months, it's become increasingly clear to me, and I think to you, that innovative higher education means finding ways to communicate and teach using technologies that we've never dreamed of. And, I've used with the trustees the illustration of those, I think they're IBM commercials, where Ellen Page comes into the classroom, and it's the the elementary school that she attended as a child, and they say, "Oh, we're going to go on a field trip, Ellen," and she thinks back about the time she went to the barn, and saw the cow, and they said, "Oh no, we're about to go to China," and she said, "Oh yeah, that's great, it's a long way," and then on the flat screen behind her is the Chinese classroom that's saying "Ni hao," and in real time they're talking to each other. And so I'm thinking, we really need to do that. We need to be having people in the field in the Yucatan digging up remnants of prehistoric civilizations that are broadcasting real time to our classrooms here and to associate classrooms all over the United States. Or we need to have our next sojourn into mediation, where we are competing against other universities and colleges around the United States, televised on our own screens that we're sharing with our students real time who are still in classes here. Or we need to be showing the next GTA performance to our partner schools in China real time. But you know what? That's so out of date. And that's thinking ahead of the curve 5 years ago. What we need to be doing today is watching the commercial where the folks are sitting on the couch, and then they get up and using Kinect technology, they're bowling or playing tennis, where they're using 3D 365-degree sensors so that their body in the form of an avatar is present in another reality. Can you imagine a classroom of 35 people from around the world who are real-time participating in that learning experience from 35 different platforms of intelligence? I mean, that's where we need to be leading. And that does fit under innovative technology. Oops, wrong one. So at Sachs, I heard this phrase, "To stay the same, the United States has to change." Meaning that change is going on so rapidly around us that if you want to just tread water in today's society, economically and quality of living, you've got to be advancing because everybody else is advancing around you. And I thought, well, you know, that's exactly right. And it's exactly right from a pedagogical standpoint too, isn't it? For us to maintain just the momentum we have to do even more than we've been doing in order to accelerate our understanding of how to communicate with our students. And some of the unfortunate truths are that the United States is 9th globally in per capita college graduates. We actually were like 14th. We've come up a little bit. But I think some of that's, you know, the statistics and damn statistics, it's just manipulation of numbers. We are somewhere down around 10th or lower. And that's not good. We used to lead. We are definitely in the mid-20s when it comes to technical graduates in science and technology and engineering and mathematics, and going down, not up. We are definitely falling behind social needs when it comes to graduating all ranges of healthcare professionals and teacher education. And you can take this one to the governor, the new governor and his associates, all of whom are our friends. You can tell them I said it any day you want to, but Georgia's short-sighted view of budgeting for public schools and cutting teacher positions is just exacerbating the teachers gap that already exists. We already are understaffed in the state of Georgia from a public school teacher standpoint, and we are going to fall into a hole that is going to be extremely hard to climb out of if we don't reverse the trend in teacher education and teacher compensation. The Secretary of Education was at Sachs, and she spoke for a great length of time, and after that particular meeting was over, I went up to her and I said, look, but let's be real clear. The Secretary of Education the other day was asked a question about graduate education and teacher preparation and said and responded ambiguously. He did not say, yes, we need to make sure that teachers continue to be educated. Yes, we need to reward teachers with continued higher pay as they achieve higher degrees. He said something ambiguous. And that's been used by all the folks in the United States who want to cut state budgets to say, see, the national Secretary of Education doesn't even support master's degrees. The truth is he does, but he didn't have the foresight or the guts to come out and say, no, I support master's degrees in higher education, because who wants a doctor who went to medical school and then 20 years later is trying to remember what he or she learned and hasn't been upgraded and enhanced in their teaching? And who wants a 5th grade teacher who went to school 30 years ago and hasn't learned anything about technology or advancing the state of pedagogy and knowledge to be teaching your 5th grade kids? Nobody. But the government needs to be unambiguous in the way that they express that, and we need to be unambiguous in the way that we express it. And part of that is the stance that we must take as we are producing teacher graduates and encouraging people to go into teaching profession, undergraduate or higher education at Brenau. We have to support it. So higher education in the United States has to adapt, not just Brenau. We have to adapt to new technologies. We have to learn how to utilize the things that the world is already accepting and utilizing in game technology and game theory, and using it in the classroom, wherever that classroom may be. So really, I think that for us to stay the same, we have to change. But for Brenau to realize its strategic plan for 2025 to grow to 5,000 students, half of whom are graduate students, to advance all of these causes that we have a particular market opportunity to advance, we have to revolutionize. We don't need just to change to stay the same. We've got to be able to say, I've never thought about doing it that way, but yes, maybe we should. And I'm talking especially to those of you who believe yourselves to be a true devotee of the liberal arts, as I am. Undergraduate school, 1,100 students, totally liberal arts, all the way through liberal arts. But We cannot continue only to think of doing it the way we always did it, and that there is only one way and one sequence of learning. We've got to find ways to reach and communicate with students in all of the possible venues and opportunities that are out there. Or the great ideas and the great goals and the great possibilities that you represent will never come to fruition because they're going to go to somebody else's classroom. It used to make me really upset that my daughter and son, in their graduate studies, one in medicine, the other in dentistry, only attended about 50% of the lectures at Wake Forest Medical School and University of Alabama Dental School, until I realized, this is 5 years ago, that the lectures they weren't attending were all on that little computer they were carrying around with them, downloaded, to be viewed and reviewed and notated and digested at their convenience, not the lecturer's convenience. So, Brenau can and will claim the higher ground, and our higher ground is based on an understanding of the liberal arts as applied to the world of the future, not the world of the past. It includes an understanding that those liberal arts will lead to professional preparation. It includes, without a doubt, includes communications technology. Online technology is also out of date, right? I mean, within 5 years, this keyboard up here, right, it's going to be completely, an antique. Everything's going to be touchpad or otherwise censored, and communications will not be online. It'll all be cellular or satellite or something else. I mean, the iPod is truly an information technology revolution because it is portable internet, not constrained by Wi-Fi or optic fibers. 10 years ago, I remember sitting in a conference, and folks heard this the other day, it may have sparked your memory. I remember sitting in a conference when a guy came on and was showing us on this video screen this unbelievable new technology called GPS. And he said, now you see that? That spots us. And we had a topographic map. And he said, that's us. That's where we are. And when the government releases the software, we'll be able to get better location, because at that time you could only get location to about 20 feet. They were afraid of security breaches and that the Chinese could use a GPS signal to sight in a missile, so they'd only give you a piece of real estate about 20 feet square and say you're somewhere in there. Well, of course, today, you can find yourself exactly on the map. I always was wondering about, if you miss by 20 feet with a missile, does it matter? So I don't know that the scale was that important anyway. But he said, in a few years, these things are going to be portable, and they're going to be in automobiles, and you can find out where you are as you're driving along. And yet everybody, yeah, sure. Right. Well, who buys an automobile that you don't have Jane telling you that turn left and getting really mad with you if you don't? And Jane's in there talking to you based on the communications that she's received from the satellite. So online technology is out, but communications technology is a component of this formula for claiming the higher ground for Brenau. And so the higher ground, I think, really is globally recognized academic leadership. It doesn't mean we're the #1 school in the world, but it means that we're connected, that we are engaging in an enterprise of international learning, whether we are looking at it on a research basis, on a baccalaureate basis, or on a graduate clinical basis. Our students are connected to the world, and if they produce the type of product from our learning programs that we have designed, there is no choice, but we will be globally recognized because we will be educating folks from around the globe as we're educating ourselves. Well, you all cannot read this, but what this is a diagram of the academic components of the university as it exists today. And the reason for this was to display to the trustees that we now have 4 colleges. We have a College of Business and Mass Communications with its dean. We have a College of Education. We have a College of Health and Science. We have a College of Art and Humanities. And those colleges represent the elevation of the disciplines of study in those former schools to a level of recognition that there's graduate work going on here, there's independent thought going on here, that there's enough important focus in this area of study that we deserve really good quality enhancement. The idea of developing the college system is to improve the quality of instruction and learning in those areas. It is not to produce silos. It is not to produce separated elements of learning. No, contrary, with our 4 portals, we're supposed to be merging those areas of learning. But within those areas, we've got to be ever mindful of increasing our quality. And what do? You give somebody a championship. You become the champion of quality in this area. And that's the idea of establishing the dean as someone with authority beyond the name. It's also nice to graduate from the College of X at some university, and it recognizes the status of a university. One thing I do want to note is that the deans of those 4 colleges are all wearing multiple hats, doing different additional duties, as in addition to colleges, we established the undergraduate and graduate school. And at the same trustee meeting, we established the Sidney O. Smith Graduate School of Brenau University. Sid Smith is one of our trustees. He is a federal judge appointed by Lyndon Johnson, who rendered many of the important, very practical, civil rights focused decisions in the state of Georgia during the early 70s. It's a privilege to have his name on our graduate school. Now, we didn't get $50 million for that. You know, a friend of mine from Emory, when I was talking to them about the need to recognize Sid and the need for us to have that type of esteem in the naming of our graduate school, and I said, you know, the economy's not good, and we just don't have the opportunity to fund it like we'd like to. And this person said, well, you know, sometimes it's just the right thing to do. And this was the right thing to do for us. And we will fund this school to the point of about $10 million for graduate studies. And that is part of the capital campaign that we're in the silent phase of right now. But that $10 million will be for endowment for graduate professors and graduate student fellowships. Right now, we have almost no financial aid going to graduate students, and we have to develop lines of support for them. So that $10 million initial funding for the Sidney O. Smith Graduate School will all go towards enhancing both instruction and support of outstanding scholars. So we have a dean of the graduate school to enhance and focus the quality of that, and that is Gail Sterich, also serving as dean of College of Health and Sciences. Well, not to allow, and intentionality is really important here, very, very important, not to allow Brenau University's Women's College to sort of gradually sink into non-existence and not to allow it to be just sort of absorbed by the amoeba of the university. We thought we also need to intentionally designate a champion for the women's college as it needs to persist and thrive. And appropriately, the dean of the undergraduate school would be an appropriate dean for the women's college, since the women's college is essentially an undergraduate liberal arts institution. So know that Andrea Birch, who is dean of the undergraduate school, is the dean of the women's college, the standard bearer, the champion of women's education. And I do believe that it's extremely important that Brenau maintain and support the idea of that single gender education as the rest of the university functions in its areas. I hope that's not even a debate anymore. I think that we understand that of those 52 remaining women's colleges now, there are only 13 that are like us, that are not either affiliated with a church or some other external funding organization, that have to stand on their own from a cash flow standpoint, and we do that because we have these other lines of revenue, graduate programs, evening programs, co-educational campuses, and other areas. But that's the structure, and that's how it'll work for some time, I hope. Well, that's backwards, too. So, the fall head count at one point in time, before drops and adds occurred, was 2780, which was a record. Last year's fall head count at its apex was 2760, which was a record. 2590, I think, was a record in 2008, and we were about at that record level previously, in some years way past. So we've had good overall enrollment growth, even in some bad economic times. If you break that down a little bit, undergraduate head count was 1820 at that time, and graduate was 960. So roughly a third of our students are graduate students, 960 students of Brenau University. If you break down that a little bit further, looking at different platforms and venues, roughly 1,389 were evening and weekend students. We don't have an evening and weekend college anymore. We're trying to do away with the partitions, but evening and weekend students, as it would have been recorded previously, evening and weekend college, roughly 1,389. As you can see, that's been pretty darn flat. A little bit of a blip year before last, but pretty darn flat in total enrollment, around 1,400 for the last 4 years. The women's college has actually plateaued and declined a bit from a high in 2007. And the online program has grown from 139 to over 500. And that's where the overall growth has occurred. Now, those are students who are considered online students. Those are not students who are women's college students who are taking an online course or evening students who are taking an online course. These are students who are online students. So if you look at this overall growth of online students, it's a 259% increase in 6 years. That's not bad. When I first came and heard you had an online program, even when I was interviewing, and this is only 6.5 years ago, right? And it's not that long ago. But when I first came and heard about this online program, this liberal arts devotee was completely convinced that it couldn't produce the quality of education that a classroom could produce. Okay, so I'm 180 degrees turned around from that now, and I was just totally wrong. And you know the reasons as much as I do, but they start with standardized test performance, and they go all the way through testimonial and student outcome evaluations. And when we have been able to get responses from online students as to why they stuck with the Brenau program, it has not been uncommon for them to say, because they cared about me more than the other folks, You know, the online world is a very market-savvy world, and it is extremely unusual to find an online student who hasn't gone to several other universities online. So the question is, why did they choose you and stick with you? The other question of why they choose you and stick with you when it comes to Brenau is that our online courses take more time than other people's online courses. They have more content than other people's online courses. They demand more interaction and response on a weekly basis than other people's online courses. So why did those students stick with you? Because maybe you got the students who really came here to have a college experience, not to get just a credential. We all know the size of these immense student bodies that you hear about in the for-profits that are online. I don't aspire to those. I don't think any of you aspire to those from a size standpoint. I just want their top 5% quality students, because that's what I think we have already. We have self-selected students who are willing to pay our highest tuition rate in general and work harder in most cases than an on-the-ground student does. If you think about it, how many on-the-ground students do you know of that kind of sit in the back of the classroom and doze off, or texting somebody else, or so on and so on? You can't do that in an online program. I mean, certainly there's a bit of downtime, but you've got to pay attention. You've got to log in. You've got to comment. You've got to present yourself and represent yourself in that course. So I think we're onto something here. It's not the fact that it's easier for us to teach. It's the fact that we are somehow able to translate, which I think those values come from the Women's College, of care and nurture and concern for each and every student. We're somehow, through our culture, able to convey that even unto the online programs. And again, that's intentionality. It's having these annual summits where we bring together faculty from all of our distal places that are teaching online with our faculty that are more or less in residence here, and you talk to each other, and we talk about culture and teach best practices and how to be a really good teacher in today's delivery mode. I think that we have a lot, we can always improve. We need to improve. We need to improve our technology supporting the online students and teaching, as well as improving the quality of the education. But this is the right way to be going. This is the number of Brenau students who are enrolled in online courses. Right, 499 are online students, but over 1,200 are enrolled in online courses. That means we've got 700 and some students who are either women's college students or evening and weekend students who are taking an online course for their convenience in scheduling, for graduation, for getting a requirement out of the way, because it fits their life to be able to experience the flexibility of an online course. I will say this, that 6+ years ago, when we were talking about this, do you remember the hoops you had to jump through to get one of your students into an online course? I mean, there were artificial barriers there just so we wouldn't have students in online courses, because we were afraid that we would lose control. We would lose the liberal arts control of having them sit at our feet and express adoration towards their professor. Well, they can do that over the internet. But this flexibility has to be a component of the way we look at scheduling and course preparation and accelerated learning going forward. You know, online and hybrid courses have to be the mainstay to conventional education. Okay, the gross revenue projected for the budget for this year is $43 million. Gross revenue in 2005 was $26 million. This is before scholarship discounts. This is total gross revenue. So we've almost doubled in gross revenue. So the number of students you saw in increase was 30-40% increase, but that 30-40% increase has generated almost a doubling of revenue from increased numbers of bodies taking courses and paying for it, and also tuition increases. Now, it is remarkable, by the way, and you probably never even hear this. You don't know this, but the trustees do. It is remarkable that these last 3 years of tuition, revenue growth have occurred in extremely bad economic times. And you know that 2 out of the last 3 years has been at a 3% salary increase pool. We had 1 year where we really couldn't give increases. And that you know, though, that your benefits have stayed the same and your retirement has stayed the same. I can't tell you how many of the colleagues that I talked to day before yesterday who said, well, you know, we're trying to get our TIAA contribution back up to 3%. We had to wipe it out altogether for 2 years. And we're hoping to be able to give a salary increase next year. We haven't been able to give one for 3 years, but we're working on it. We've individually fared much better than most of the private institutions with whom we find ourselves both aspiring to be and with whom we are peers. Now, a great deal of that the credit goes to Wayne and Sandra trying to keep you from spending the money that you want to spend, but maybe don't have to spend. But also knowing that there are things that we do have to expend money on that are unforeseen or need to be planned, and trying to take care of them too. It is a constant juggling job, but we've managed to do it. And recall that we have had a tremendous downturn in the economy and in stock value and equities value, and our endowment suffered like everybody else's endowment. We probably lost at the peak of our losses, you know, over 30% of that corpus. Now we've come back some, but when our endowment drops 30%, which you could say is, you know, $12–14 million, we don't have the income off of that $12 or $14 million to supplement the budget. What do we usually do for our revenue? We usually draw 5% of the trailing 36-month average of the endowment's value, comes straight into the operating line of the budget. So let's say you had a $50 million endowment at one time. You were drawing then $2.5 million into operating dollars to keep the lights on, to pay your salary and my salary, and real hard dollars. And let's say you experienced a 35% decline and you lost $15 million, so now you only have $35 million in endowment. Then 5% of that's a lot less than 5% of $50 million. And when you're working with a conservative board who doesn't want to see you go into your corpus, and you don't want to either, you cut it yourselves in preparing your budget even more than that. So we're drawing off of our endowment today less than $1 million, and we were drawing a couple of years ago more than $2 million. So we've absorbed over $1 million of decline in real dollar income. Now understand, we've absorbed more than $1 million a year in decline in real dollar income and still been able to offer salary increases, to keep the benefits the same, to expand the programs that we've expanded and continue to grow. That's taken real hard fiscal management, but it's gotten us to a position that's a good position to be in. If you look at the gross revenues from just tuition, not everything, but just tuition, then we've increased from 18 to 33 million, which is an 82% increase over the years. Now, the reason I broke this out of the total amount is because I want to show you the next two slides that lets you understand a little bit more about where those tuition dollars come from. Okay, let's just look at just last year's tuition, the $33 million gross tuition. $8 million of that went to financial aid. Of the $33 million, $8 million went to financial aid. A few years ago, it was $5.5 million. Now, if you draw back on your dim memory after all of my verbiage, remember the enrollment of the women's college being flat for the last 4 to 5 years, a little bit of decline. The growth has been in graduate and online college. You see that $8 million is almost double what we were a few years ago. 99% of that money has gone to women's college students. There's no financial aid in graduate programs. There's no financial aid online. There's no financial aid evening and weekend. Those are all the programs that have grown your growth, they've grown your school, that you've developed. But what we've been doing each year is increasing the amount of money we pay in scholarships to women college students just to maintain the enrollment that we've had over the last few years. Now, is that clear? We've been paying more to students just to keep flat enrollment in the women's college. Now, anybody tells you that we don't support the women's college hasn't seen the scholarship numbers. It means that every one of those online students, a portion of their revenue, a portion of their tuition goes to pay for a women's college student. Because all the money we give to annual fund, all the money that trustees give to annual fund endowments only come up to about $2 million. Then we have another $6 million that we've got to find somewhere. What do? This is like going to a car dealership. We draw a line through it and say we're only going to charge you this much. But to balance our budget, we've got to come up with that money from somewhere. And where does it come from? It comes from your online student and your graduate student and your evening and weekend college student who get no discounts. Now, on the one hand, that shows support for the women's college, which I think we have to do. On the other hand, is it fair? If you're saying we're going to be at 5,000 students in 2025 and half of them are going to be graduate students, is it fair to say they are going to carry on their backs all of the expenses for all of the programs that don't make it fiscally? I'm not proposing that you reduce that money, that $8 million. What I'm proposing is we find ways to supplement the growth in graduate programs with graduate scholarships and fellowships from endowments and other sources. We've got to find ways to support the growing programs as well as preserving the existing important programs. That's one of the reasons for the capital campaign to put $25 million in the endowment that will generate, as I said, fellowship money, scholarship money, and professorship money. Well, I have to say I'm proud that we've been able to generate $4 million more in discount, still give raises, still keep our benefits, still grow our other programs, and not go in the hole. It's not a trajectory we can keep up, but it's been necessary. Of the online students today, $8 million in tuition is generated by their enrollment, which is 24% of your tuition revenue. It was 9% of your tuition revenue in only 2005. That's an important number because that shows you why we could take care of the financial aid and the other programmatic increases that we've been able to afford. Probably, you might have guessed that, and I guessed that before those numbers were actually generated, but probably more startling is the fact that 24% of your tuition income, 8.25, comes from graduate students. So now there's overlap there because some of those online students are graduate students. But if you put the online and graduate students together, you're looking at a significant amount of the total tuition income for the university. Where years ago, not so many, 5 or 6, they amounted to 15, 10%. So our growth indeed has been in the areas where our strategic plan says it should be and will be. It's in graduate programs, it's in online programs. So maybe we are actually going from a planning standpoint in the right direction. So based on current enrollment trends, this is just a linear extrapolation. This is just a best fit curve. This is undeniably wrong. But That's never affected a scientist before. If we can connect dots, we do. And if you look at our past performance, and if we didn't change anything, if you want things to stay the same, and you keep the same level of growth, then by 2025 we'll be at 4,300 students, which is very close to our projected goal. But I'm saying we can't do that. We can't not change. We've got to change to meet the need so that we make the 5,000 student goal to begin with. This is the percent of online tuition based on that projected enrollment. In 2025, in today's dollars, we would have, just based on that enrollment increase, $81 million tuition budget, half of which would be online. You know you can't do that with the blackboard you got now and the computer technology that you got now and the computers you've got now. But you know what? That's where we need to be. Next week, I have to be out of town. I'm going to Colorado State veterinary school so my dog can get the best cancer treatment possible. It's going to be a long ride for me in Jackson. But I had a meeting that I had set up that I won't be attending, but the newly formed technology committee will be attending, even if y'all don't know you're going yet. And it's with the Apple representative who represents iPads to the education community. And the point is not if we're going to go to mobile platforms, it's whose we're going to use, when we're going to do it, what sector of the student population gets them first, and how we incorporate it into pedagogy. It has to happen. And whether it's Apple or somebody else's technology, those are decisions that you all have to make. But this is not going to be achieved by Blackboard. It's not going to be achieved by keyboards. It's not going to be achieved by today's software. This is the percent, same curve, graduate tuition. Graduate tuition will be about $41 million there as well. So if you took graduate and online overlap out of it, of the $81 million, probably $60 million will be a combination of all your graduate and online students, 2/3 of your tuition. The Strategic Planning Committee, which is important for us, extremely important going forward, because it's your voice extrapolated through the vision of the future, extrapolating your voice into a vision of the future, came this year with its first real full year of analysis and results and said, we need to emphasize, if we're going to have the institutional growth and all of those budgetary implications that go along with institutional growth, then we've got to have a capital campaign. Because we can't raise this money all on tuition. We can't raise it all on 5% increase a year. And we can't raise it all on growing our enrollment without growing our facilities. So what they said we need to expand our communications outreach. We need to be able to do all of these things technically we've talked about. And that means that if we're going to have increased enrollment, particularly graduate enrollment, we have to support IT. And we have to support the IT infrastructure, which we are outgrowing as we speak. Now, they said this without prompting, by the way. I did not ask them to say that. They said that. So the question is, are we gaining momentum on this trend? What we look to see is by 2025 having an online enrollment that exceeds 2,200 students. That we have facilities to support those 2,200 students, which probably means more than 600 online courses. And that our overall educational experience is enhanced by our distance learning capabilities. Overall, for every student, every place, even if they're not at this campus or online. So that means that of course, we are going to incorporate hybrid courses. And if we go at the rate we're going right now, we're talking about at least 350 hybrid courses that are not online courses, that are either offered to the residential students or the evening and weekend coeducational students or at the distance learning classes. We have to have the support capacity for those as well. $4,700 students taking online or hybrid courses. So what it means is building that building on Debbie Thompson's house. This is a view of Debbie Thompson's house from the library parking lot. And this obviously is conceptual. Debbie will have some architectural modifications, I'm sure. But this is based on programmatic need. There's a lot of square footage here. The first floor and or second floor, it doesn't much matter, will have at least 14 classrooms and studios. Those are multi-use classrooms. They'll all be the highest possible technology smart rooms for all classes. That area will also be the tech innovator. This is where our IT department will find itself, as well as additional IT folks, what servers we need to have on campus that are not outsourced as cloud computing, and what hardware that needs to be housed will be housed there. The next floor, and I will be quick to say that Lynn Jones will tell you this is not optimum interior design. It won't look like this, but there will be 40 offices there. These are just cubicles, Lynn. They're just there to hold space. Yeah, okay. And we will make them better. But there will be 40 faculty offices, which will be, at this point in time, there'll be education faculty, there'll be the humanities faculty, and other faculties as your deans see need to be in that high-tech facility. And what I'm really excited about is this 4,200 square foot common use area. This will be 4 classrooms that will be divided by removable soundproof walls that have the capacity of going up to 400 people in mass learning at the same time with these walls and ceilings covered with the highest tech, flat screen and holographic IT platforms. I don't know what they are. They probably don't exist now. But these classrooms are different from those classrooms downstairs because these aren't just like your smart classrooms. These are laboratories. These are the places where those IT folks in the downstairs office areas will be bringing their ideas to you and saying, hey, can you try this one in biology? And this is where this Connect technology gets to us with 3D. I mean, this is where anatomy and physiology allows you to walk around the hologram of the body that's being dissected. This is where the brain is something you can walk in and out of as you're looking at it from the student's perspective. So I do not doubt that we'll buy some stuff that will be out of date and that we'll do some stuff that won't work. But the whole idea is to be experimental and leading edge and to take this to places we've never been. And by the way, looking over here at Barbara Steinhaus, I am thinking of all of the performance opportunities you've got with a globally linked 3-dimensional room that has 400 people in it. What about performing in multiple concerts around the world with thousands of students being directed by a consortium of artists? The opportunities are really limitless. Oh, okay. Yeah, I did that already. So we're talking about 450 students in hybrid courses per class period in this facility. We're talking about 4,500 class hours in classrooms on one day. And if you count the online students that will be served, you're talking about 2,500 to 9,000 students a day served by this one class building. And a great room to accommodate this large group for both community and technology-centric use. So if we built that building today, it would be about $6 million. It would take us about $2 million to outfit the technology. It needs about $1.75 million to cover the increase in water, electricity, lights, the operating expenses and maintenance. By the way, we have that in hand as a bequest from an alum from last year. So the total's about 9.75, 8 still being needed. I'm not speaking out of turn. I told the trustees the same thing. I have spoken with several foundations. There's one foundation in Atlanta. I asked them to pay for the whole $8 million. They said, we can't do that. I said, well, split it with me. And they said, well, we won't get out in front of your trustees and supporters, but if you can come up with the $4 million and ask for matching, I think we can talk. So out of 9.75, I think we're only $4 million away. That may not happen this year, but it won't be long. And it's really a virtual necessity for us to maintain the trajectory and the needs. But I think that's exciting. Now, there are other alternatives. We're looking at some buildings around town that, you know, the disadvantage of a bad economy is that people close their business. The advantage of a bad economy is that we might buy their building cheap. And so utilizing the same kind of refurbishment ideas as we have at Featherbone, it's not inconceivable to say that we won't build that building, but we'll buy a bank building, or we'll buy a warehouse, or we'll do this or that. We'll put that space together and make it top-class space. But it will be something that will expand your capability based on your design. Okay, so I've actually made a lot of progress. You may not think I have, but I have. This is part of that presentation that I have put together for the legislature and for the governor. And the point here is dealing with politicians, particularly in a down budget cycle and a recession. Talking about the esoteric components of education and the fact that we better humanity by bettering the individual, and that we create life-changing and world-changing opportunities with every single student that we graduate, and that ask them if they can consider the fact that over half of our students, adults and residential, they are the first student to attend college in their family, and what that does to change the life of a family. All of that doesn't really count much right now. What really counts right now is, can they balance the state budget? And I will tell you, there is no documented driver of state economy that comes close to increasing higher education in your state. When you raise the capability of the workforce to generate money, you raise the capability of the workforce to pay taxes. If you look at the average earnings of a doctoral degree individual, this was in 2009, it's $81,000. Obviously not looking at professors. If you look at a professional degree, and this is talking about someone with an MBA or a lower degree, but a highly skilled professional degree, it's $79,000. If you look at someone who dropped out of high school, it's $23,000. You see the huge differential between the higher degree versus the marginally educated. But also look at the unemployment. The higher your degree attainment, the lower your unemployment classification. So when you think about all of the unfortunate folks who are out of work today, it is also unfortunate that they had to finish their education prematurely. Now, you and I both know folks that have PhDs who don't have jobs. It doesn't say that if you attain this level, you will make that money and you will be employed. But across the United States, these are the facts. Also in the state of Georgia, we educate in private schools at least 30,000 Georgia students a year, Georgia citizens, who don't go to state schools. If they went to a state school, it would cost the state taxpayers an additional $7,000 per capita above their tuition, above all of their other income, to educate them, which would be an increase of $210,000 a year. You'd have to come up for state funding for higher education if it weren't for the private schools in Georgia. We only get less than $1,000 now for the TEG. That's a tuition equalization grant. it costs the state $30 million to educate that 30,000 students, saves the state $180 million a year. They can't afford to let us go out of business if they understand that. And if you look at the income over a 35-year period, the average doctoral person will earn $1.7 million more than a high school graduate in a lifetime, and $2.16 million more than someone who dropped out of school in a lifetime. Now, those are important numbers based on the next slide. In a lifetime, that doctoral degree graduate will pay almost $100,000 more income tax to the state of Georgia than someone who dropped out of school. That doctoral degreed individual will pay $80,000 more than someone with a high school diploma in income taxes without raising taxes. So what does that mean? It means if you increase Georgia's workforce by 10,000 college graduates, just 10,000, remember there are 30,000 Georgia graduates in the private system already, you increase the state tax revenues by $20 million a year without raising anybody's taxes. Everybody wants more money and nobody wants to raise taxes. Well, here's a way to do it. Graduate more people from Georgia colleges, private and public, and keep them in Georgia. I wish we could get that one through to the legislature. That says that's the end of my slideshow, so it must be. We are doing the right thing socially, morally, and economically. Yeah, if you think about it, if our mission says prepare your students to live professionally and personally fulfilling lives, you are covering the spectrum. I'm excited to be part of it, and I hope you are. The one thing I got to say that's negative is it's negative with me too, okay? We've got to be open to I won't say embracing the change, but at least allowing the change to happen. Yeah, nothing is certain but change. That sounds great when you're 28 and you're causing the change. I remember that. Now that I am 60, will be soon, it's not as exciting because I don't understand it all. But it doesn't matter whether I understand it, right? It doesn't. What really matters is what that change is going to mean through our students for the world. And we are in the unique position to do it. I didn't show this. You've seen it before. Remember, we first did a comparison of doctoral degree private institutions in the Southeast. You start out with all these institutions in the Southeast and you end up with doctoral degree granting institutions. There are only a couple in Georgia. Don't count Emory because they're a national institution. And, you know, it's us and Mercer. And it is us now because we got SAC's approval. It's us and Mercer. If you start going to Florida, you don't get to another one of us till you get down to Miami. And if you go up to the East Coast, you don't get to another one of us till you get to Elon. We have a geographically favorable position, not just a good market plan. We can make this happen, and we can make it happen together. But every time you see a trustee, thank them, smile at them, and ask them for money. Okay. Okay. Now that's the presentation. That's what I had talked to them about, what I talked to you about. But anything at all you'd like to correct, add, express an opinion upon, or direct us into another area? Anything?
Yes, you broke down the growth a number of ways. How does that break down by the 4 colleges? And also, the second part is with the new doctoral approval, how does that factor into our growth?
Okay, repeat the question. How does the growth break down to the 4 colleges? And how does the new doctoral level approval affect the overall strategic plan, if you will, and such? Is that fair? Okay. Let's answer the last one first. the first doctoral program, well, hey, let's do it this way. The door is now open, the race is now on, bring us your doctoral plans. Okay. But as a component of your doctoral program, you have to present a business plan that demonstrates that you will be a net positive cash producer, not a consumer. I mean, that is the way we understand growth in our graduate programs. Although we are committed to finding financial aid for graduate programs, substantially more than we have, they must produce more cash net than they consume, or we can't do it. I do not see this in our plan, I do not see this in our future, becoming a research fund generated institution such that we've got to go out and get foundation grants in order to survive. These are pre-professional credentialing programs that people need in order to advance themselves in careers. All right, so that being said, it does not logically lend itself that every degree program that we have in an undergraduate program is something you can extrapolate to the graduate program, because a lot of our undergraduate programs lead to graduate study in other fields, a la political science might take you to law. It doesn't take you to a PhD in political science as often. Okay, but let's talk about health care. There's a continuing driving impetus in society to demand more quality, more expertise, and higher competence in all branches of healthcare. Hence, there's a drive to take the requisite qualification for nursing practice, a nurse practitioner, from the master's level to the clinical doctorate level. And we anticipate that to be our first doctoral degree. I mean, I can't see any way it won't be. We're ready to get going. The nursing school has been working on this program for a couple of years. They've got the plan out. They've got it submitted. We're going ahead. But if OT came along fast enough, we'd be glad to let them get in under the wire, because they've got the same driving motivation and the same driving factors. The quality of health care in the occupational therapy area is being demanded to increase both credential and quality. Clinical psychology is the next obvious possibility. Despite state budgets, education, teacher education has to grow into a doctoral program, I think, and obviously business will as well. But I don't want to leave it there. Although Masters of Fine Arts are master's level degrees, not doctoral, they are terminal. And they do require that extensive additional education and performance capability. And I think while we are growing these other professional and credential areas, that we will grow MFAs in aspects of theater, vocal performance, and dance, and maybe studio art. Of course, we'll see. But I mean, Brenau is a liberal institution, and we will grow our arts programs. I haven't felt the push, the momentum from the arts faculty to look for doctoral programs there as much as MFAs. But if it's justifiable and doable, then I think we would. I think one particularly interesting MFA is in theater pedagogy, and in music pedagogy. I mean, how many high school music and theater teachers do you know that actually have been taught how to teach high school music and theater? That credential and that training is woefully needed and woefully absent. So I think it fits our growth to a T. We are looking for ways to advance our service to society by generating more degreed students who will provide that service. Now, the breakdown into the 4 schools, the growth has been and continues to be in healthcare and business. That's where it's been. That does not mean that the school has any predilection or bias towards healthcare and business. It means that's where the students have been attracted from an enrollment standpoint. Does anybody knowledgeable in enrollment numbers and stuff like that want to modify what I just said or correct me? Darn, that's good. Yes? Yeah, and the fact is, we're not a technical school, right? I mean, the fact is that we are here to provide a liberal foundation and core to every one of those folks that graduates in business or nursing. Mm-hmm.
I wondered if there's a strategy to increase the enrollments in the outlying campuses, particularly at the ones where courses seem to have fallen through.
Yeah.
Speaking on ground.
Well, first of all, does there need to be a strategy? Yes. Is there one that, with which we are satisfied? No. We are actually evaluating some submissions by external consultants who evaluate demographics and population flow and need to determine if we need to reorient our offerings in some of those areas to develop just such a strategy. This is my third university with all outlying campuses. And I think the biggest problem is that we think of them as outlying campuses. And I certainly embrace counting their numbers in 2,800. And I think I should equally, and we should equally embrace the attention we pay to them, the support we give them, and the consideration of what programs should be offered and supported equally. I think there is a bias towards support of a residential program in the way we think and feel, because this is where a lot of us live and work. So I think some of the absence of that strategy is the lack of intentionality in supporting those schools. And they are Brenau. Lynn.
Would you go to slide 15? I have a question on it. Thank you. There's no doubt that more financial aid goes to the women's college. That's obviously a given. How do we take into account, though, that the women's college students pay substantially more per credit hour than many of our graduate programs, and certainly a lot of the undergraduate evening weekend colleges?
They also receive all of the student services that we supply. We have a huge budget for health care, counseling, room residence assistance, food. I mean, you know, it's extremely expensive to keep 900 women alive on campus. But I mean, of course, that's why we give them more money too, because it is more expensive, and we try to offset that. But the real issue is you know, if we just had the non-residential approach, and had no dorms and had no one eating in a dining hall, and had tea rooms all over, honestly, the expense of running the school goes down dramatically. No, this is institutional aid, excuse me, which goes to everything. You know, your total bill, if you're a residential student, could be $29,000. Our average discount for our residential students about 45% off that top bill, which includes tuition, room, and board. If you are a commuting student, you actually get a little bit less average aid, because we don't have to take into account the residential amount. Well, so it does count everything. But you know, I don't mind doing it. You know, it's just a conundrum. And by the way, if we didn't, we wouldn't have the 900. They would go elsewhere. And we do want to support not only the thought of a women's college, but the reality of one. And I think that means having a critical mass of students. I mean, once you're down to 250, Sophie Newcomb makes sense, which means you get absorbed into Tulane. But not when you're at 900 thriving. So I think we've got to do it. But but it is something that we have to, I mean, we worry about all the time. How do we keep this aid up, support the growing areas, balance the budget? I mean, it's a never-ending question. And it's not value judgment, really. It really isn't value, and the value is already understood. It's really cash flow.
As we move toward more technology-based and newer technologies, things for medical reasons, is there going to be funding for professional development for faculty to keep up with those advances?
I hope so. I mean, you know, that there has to be a way to train faculty in new things that we're doing. And so, again, I would hope that we find different ways to do it. And I'm not trying to say, I don't want to spend money. I'm hoping that we'll be smart about it so that we train with the same technology that we're using to increase our competency. You know, it might not be flying everybody to San Francisco. It might be having San Francisco come here on the, you know, on the cellular net. But yeah, I mean, that's got to happen. Gee, I don't want to sound negative, but I don't want the tone to be negative. But also there is inherent, I think, in being a member of the professoriate, that there is an obligation for you to remain at some level of currency in the pedagogy, the skill of the pedagogy that you're using. Not that you should be training yourself to be a programmer, but I think, you know, there's a balance there. We should provide opportunity and access to training, but, you know, the faculty has to take advantage of it. But I mean, yeah, and you know, we've tried to offer and continue to try to offer as much as possible different sources of professional development and, you know, faculty aid as we can. Obviously, in better budget years, we'll offer more. But you remember the $100,000 of pot we set aside as, you know, the culture of success grants to, you know, that idea is with us all the time, and as that becomes fundable, it'll come back, and I think that gives you the flexibility to say, oh, I want to get trained in this technology. The thing that's bad about what I was saying is that I'm saying if we're going to try to be smart about offering you training, that might mean saying, okay, well, 20 faculty members need to go take this short course, as opposed to saying, what do you want to learn? And I think we need to be moving more towards what do you want to learn rather than just buying bulk and getting it cheap. So having those cultural success grants getting going again will allow faculty to say, I need $2,000 for this, and then apply it individually. And that's definitely where we're going back to. Other stuff? My vet didn't call yet. I'm a little nervous. Well, maybe she's going to call a little bit. Well, I think we're doing great. And I think y'all are doing great. Look ahead and only look behind in order to determine, you know, what you did right that you want to do more of and what you did wrong that you don't want to ever do again. And have a great holiday. And yes? We're ready. So here's the deal, right? So here's the deal. What we said about nursing, you know, it's going to be hard for anybody to catch us now, right? You're going to be the first one. Yeah. Well, we need to let the world know. We need to let the world know. It's going to be a really good year, and it's already started off that way. And you know, I always get the students who are unhappy about the fact they're not graduating, or those terrible advisors, you know, over in, I won't say which department because it changes every day. It's because it depends on whatever student made the D that she didn't want. And you'll note that if you happen to have had one of those unlucky students and they come back to me, and I will almost always refer that student back to the faculty or dean or whatever, but in my tone, don't mistake the fact that I am trying to find a way for that student to come away feeling resolved as a an implication that you didn't do your job or that you didn't care. But I think I'm always trying to err towards giving the student the opportunity to make her case and let her know that somebody cares about that case, even if we don't support it. So don't feel, and I know that some folks have, nervous or worried because I flipped an email to your department chair or dean saying, well, I got this student who's got a complaint, and would you go back and talk to Lynn? And it means nothing about Lynn's quality except that we know that Lynn is open-minded to trying to help that student out. So don't worry about that. But I do that. You know, I'm not going to sit there in my office and just dictatorially make a decision for her either. You know, but I just think that the more we listen and allow them to talk to us, very often they talk to themselves and realize why they got to the situation that they're in, and it's usually, it's often their fault. But we help them not do it again. So that's when they look back. They look back and say, I shouldn't do that. I won't do it again. Anyway, have a great holiday, and we'll see you. By the way, I am writing a book. I've written about the first third of it. It's all about people. None of you are in it yet. Bye.